Good afternoon, folks. We are the Philosophy Club Radio Hour. You are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are our own unless otherwise stated and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCC. Today's topic is morality versus ethics. Would anyone like to help me re-quack Tuesday's meeting?
Well, Orlando, I'm sure that you'd love to.
So why don't we skip the requack for today? And
let's not? Because I definitely don't attend the Tuesday clubs.
Let's jump into
Yeah, I don't remember actually talking about anything myself. So
I didn't show up.
That's because you're a real airhead.
That's messed up. Oh, jeez. Okay.
Alrighty.
So basically, what we kind of got to, obviously, we brought up the fact that morality is it's different for everybody, supposedly, because of it's circumstantial, and so it's a certain thing that we kind of as a society agree upon. You know, certain, I guess, a rule of ethics, and so having specific ethics doesn't always have to abide by a certain morality. So, and then we kind of got into the idea of where does morality stem from? Some people believed it was a higher authority. Some people that believed that it was like a social group thing. So that's kind of what the gist was there.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Orlando. I appreciate it.
Right,
and I'm sure our viewers do too.
Yes, absolutely.
What?
What?
Nothing.
What?
Don't know what you said. Anyways. Hello. Oh, they ignored me.
hello.
Okay, so what are we doing now?
All right. And now we're going to talk about our
Morality
own
and
opinions.
ethics. That's
It's almost
right.
like we've never been on a Philosophy Club Radio Hour before. Even though we've been here every time.
I was like, let's skip it.
So basically, for me, and how I define morality and ethics, morality being
Achoo.
how an individual seeing what's right and wrong, and ethics being what's the right or wrong for the whole group of people. And then I went further on dissecting that, like, ethics can be applied as like ideas as such as like they can be like law, doctrine, that and communal beliefs of that sort.
True.
So that's kind of how I kind of like try to like.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is like ethics is rules to which you live by, and morality is the ones that you choose to follow, more or less?
More like if we were to like say like I'll like throw bones at like, hey, human nature is a thing. Morality is like following your own like human nature, and saying, this is right or wrong. Sure, like this is your individual beliefs, but with like ethics, it's like the beliefs in which you have to like the code and conduct in a community or a group. Yeah.
Right. Orlando. Right, okay.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where does morality come from?
Manzi?
Yeah.
Scoggins.
Manzi got.
Hey, how are you? Come on, grab a chair. You can take my water off of it. Not yet. He will be here in 10 minutes.
After reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, I got a good personal look into like African belief systems, and that's what's influenced my idea of morality a lot. Is that the idea of like personal godhood. Like they have like their own personal gods. They also have like an individual pantheon, but they have like their own personal internal god that they worship. This is as far as I've gathered from Things Fall Apart. So I might be completely off here, but I think that idea of personal godhood is what we use to define our morality, or as we Westerners would call it, conscience.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the two are pretty much like the same idea.
So do you think it follows along with this like sort of anthropological sense that maybe it's not necessarily innate, but it's something that is consistent throughout humanity because they have similar needs as humans?
Yeah, I think that we really just like to justify how we feel by creating systems. I think that's just like a thing that humans like to do.
And so I feel like Manzi, he brought up the Hobbes perspective to say that, we're all superficial in a certain way, or not superficial, but rather we're selfish in a certain way, because of our nature. We're only looking out for ourselves. And so the idea of morality, the collective of it, is that we're better off working together. And so in essentially treating others better, I'm helping myself.
So it's like a selfish morality?
Well, that's kind of the basis of morality rather than selfish morality, but you were going to say, Mario?
Yeah, I would say that that'll probably be more Locke than Hobbes on that view.
Well, what's your view on like Hobbes? Like, how do you...
sure. So I think I'll state the difference between Hobbes and Locke, because they both agree with the same idea, which is our morality derives from what we call a social contract.
Mm-hmm.
So you would say that Locke will believe that human, by definition, we're good, that we're all born good.
So how does that? I'm just sorry to interrupt, but how does that go with the idea that we're selfish if he's believing that we're
no, that'll be
good?
Hobbes. Hobbes believe that we're selfish, meaning that we're not really good. We all have our own desires, and we only form alliances or make basically, I forgot the term that they use. Covenants.
Mm-hmm.
That we make covenants with other people, others, just so we can benefit ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Locke would say no, we don't make covenants with others. We're trying to protect property.
Mm-hmm.
And then promote happiness.
Well, see, like this is one thing I was confused. Isn't Locke kind of doesn't he base this on his idea of like natural rights?
Yeah, but he uses the same method as Hobbes, which is we derive our rights from a contract between societies that we created.
Interesting.
Because Hobbes would say that the reason why we are like a group or we all get along is because we put in place a ruthless leader. And that's basically how we are to base our contract, by having someone who's more ruthless enough, and they'll keep us all in check. While Hobbes didn't believe in the ruthless leader, which was promoted by Hobbes.
Well, wasn't that the whole basis of Leviathan, that we needed?
Yes,
a certain...
Hobbes. Yeah, the ruthless leader will be the Leviathan. Hobbes is something that you're not supposed to overthrow.
Before we get super too in depth, I just realized that we have completely forgone introductions. Do you want to keep with that, or should we actually?
Let's go ahead and do that too. Let's go ahead and do that.
All right, starting with obviously the most important, me. No, just kidding.
Oh yeah, the most important. Hello,
of course.
Please.
I'm Adrian. I am the secretary of HSL.
Oh, see, I made it a joke, but he really just took
He did.
Well, I mean,
It works.
I mean, it's just I am the most important. Right?
Oh my god.
I mean,
can we have his mic?
basically.
Hobbes was right. Jesus. Okay. Anyways.
a monster.
I'm Kalen Scoggins, professor in the government department here at Richland.
And he's amazing, for the record. I am Hannah Watson. I am the communications officer.
Watson. My name is Orlando. I am the president of the Philosophy Club, and it will stay that way because I'm going to be a dictator. That's just so you know.
I'm Dusty,
We'll overthrow you.
and I'm the Anlib who's planning to throw over our off-left Orlando here.
That's like,
I support you.
He's my right-hand man. That's a lie.
Sure, we'll say that.
That's messed up.
I'm Eva, and I'm a student and historian for Oak Club.
All right, then. I'll use my anglicized version of my name. I'm Mary Benjamin Romer, former secretary of the Richland Philosophy Club, and a graduate of philosophy in UNT.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. And please continue with your in-depth discussion.
I forgot what we were talking about.
Locke and Hobbes
Oh, we're talking about Locke
and Leviathan. And who would win in the state of nature? What?
Whoa. So now, let's move away from that a little bit, just to say, well, so if the whole idea is out here, well, we are essentially selfish by nature, and we all have different moralities, I guess you could say, through some different perspective. Then I guess I'll ask the question: what's the point of morality by that logic?
I would say that before we can answer the question, then we have to ask the question: where does morality found? Is it found outside of the human perspective, or within the human perspective? Because that was one of the main key rules about where does our moral system found.
So I remember in the philosophy club and in their meeting, they were talking about this idea, like the simple idea, like if it hurts me, then I should consider this bad. If not, then I should consider this good. So if we were to apply this to other things, like I said, like interactions with other people, and then as you like continue interacting with more and more people, and other objects and such, that's like the point where you start a basis of what's good and bad.
Yeah, that would be like kind of like David Hume promoted, which was called the our morality is pretty much subjective, which is we base our moral system based on what makes us feel good. Whatever makes us feel good will be the good. What makes us feel bad or have displeasure will be bad, which is it's based on our aesthetics and our pleasures or pain. Pleasures and pain, which is be the human method, which is called subjectivity.
Okay, so it seems to be somewhat in between, or what we seem to be coming to a consensus with is that it's somewhat in between Hobbes' version of quote unquote, for lack of a better term, will you let him
That
in?
could be anyone.
That's Mancy.
Hey, the rats.
Welcome.
The flame
I have
Ratman.
overthrown you.
is here.
Throne.
Yes.
The man.
Thrownness. Hey.
It's just as funny in
According to
class,
Locke, we can
everyone.
overthrow our ruthless leader. So we
There
overthrow
you go.
Hello.
We overthrow you, Jeff.
Oh, so by that, Hannah, I'm going to overthrow you now.
Good luck with that.
No.
Okay, so
Adrian,
basically
you
what I
can
was
move
saying
now.
was it's something similar to, or something in between Hobbes' version of selfish morality, which is that we do moral things because they benefit ourselves in the long run, and it's in between also, I would think, John Stuart Mill's, because we do the best thing for the most, the most moral thing that helps the largest amount of people, right? So it's like
Yes.
sort of in between
that's more
that.
Of a, I feel like that's more of a utilitarian.
It is, but I think it
Perspective,
can be
right?
applied to this situation.
Yeah, because utilitarian pretty much derived from subjectivity, which is what happens if we collect everybody's happiness, and whatever is more is what makes the majority or individuals that can feel pain or pleasure happy.
Right, exactly. So if all these people say that being good to another person benefits themselves, then it obviously benefits the most amount of people selfishly, right?
Yeah,
Is that always the case though?
Not necessarily. So I
Because-
think
Not
that's where
really.
the pitfall is.
I think someone brought up the idea of sort of this like this circle, like your immediate circle, and versus like just someone that's in another country. That someone who's suffering right in your immediate community, you might feel more responsible or more of a drive to actually help them than someone in another country. You know.
yeah, care ethics. That's the name of that morality, or a nickname will be feminist ethics, which is you only care about the people who are around you.
Yeah.
The farther your circle it is, the less you should care about what is farther from you. Care ethics.
Ah, interesting. So then you already surround yourself with like-minded people. So then it's basically just an extension of yourself and even more selfish, right?
Yeah, in one way, that's the downside. It'll be like it makes you selfish. Like, oh, you only care about what's closer to you, but not
Right.
what's farther from you.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting.
So at this point, I feel like we have to kind of distinguish then what makes something good and then what makes something evil. Because I guess you could say maybe something evil is a sort of injustice, perhaps. Maybe an injustice of freedom.
It depends on how you look at it, because
Yes.
like let's use Hitler for example. Every conversation leads to Hitler, but so like Hitler couldn't have just came in and said all of these other people that don't look like me and talk like me, we should kill them, because everybody would have gone.
So what was
no.
what was his rationality of it though? I mean, I hate to have to be so empathetic towards Hitler, but what was his I don't want to. I'm not saying that. I don't know.
Do you
promote
want
this.
do you want me to tell you Hitler's rationality of it?
Go ahead. Yes.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Hitler was he was a soldier in World War I, and he was very disenfranchised with the war in general. But please don't break my ear cuff. But he was very disenfranchised with war in that Germany didn't win it. As an Austrian, he super idolized Germany for some weird reason. He was like a massive weeaboo for Germany. But
I would say that it's due to nationalism.
yeah, definitely. And it was also because of his hard childhood, where he was scorned by his parents. But
Did his mother die though?
Well,
but his father abused him.
Oh, okay.
But when he came back to Germany, a broken Germany, he experienced illusions of grandeur. But he also believed that that Jews were obviously the root of all the economic problems in Germany. But he more specifically believed in the idea that they were an inferior race in that their lives are essentially suffering. Just to live as a Jew is to suffer, and the best way to eliminate that is
Alleviate that suffering.
is to kill them.
Right. So
So
in
he-
his mind, it was mercy.
Yeah, he thought that he was acting morally.
interesting.
And so he managed to make an entire race of people feel the exact same way.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
Didn't he kind of then formulate the idea of good and bad at that point on a justice of that mercy and then an injustice of letting them live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, yeah, I guess then it kind of revolves around the idea of justice and injustice.
Yeah.
Right.
And also you can say that science becomes controversial at this time period because you can say that they were morally good to gain knowledge for science. If we justified all of the atrocity that was done to people in order for the name of like science, because because they had two types of concentration camps that they did labor, but they also had the scientific camps, which they did a lot of experimentation for the name of science, which we will call like good.
And so I guess for them, they're kind of centering the idea of morality around progress as well.
Yes.
For them, it was a progression to, I guess, advance in science and to essentially stop the regression from, I guess, the Jewish community.
Right. Well, I read a story that said that the doctor who treated his mom who had cancer was Jewish, and after his mom died, he kind of blamed that on the doctor, and thereby kind of projected that entire blame on the Jewish people as a whole.
That's crazy. Wow. Ooh, okay. Let's get off of this.
On that note, can I make a quick introduction slash departure? No, you guys you've got
no,
this.
Don't leave.
I'm positive that you all do. I just have to make a
No.
couple plugs. We are
Shameless.
Richland is doing right now a cans and coats drive until December 6th. You can find the locations to donate either coats or cans of food that you're not eating or wearing. Again, you're not wearing the food, you're not eating the coats. You can find them in places like the library, as well as Sabine Hall, as well as a couple of other spots around campus. They're very obvious. So please, if you can, between now and December 6th, which is the last day of classes, donate an old coat or a can of food, a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli, something like that. Very beneficial. It's going to be a less flattering angle. Also, I wanted to shout out the conference. So the DCCCD Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference went on Wednesday. It was fantastic. I thought, for the most part, they were quality presentations. No offense, Adrian. But,
sorry, Adrian.
No, I encourage everybody to check the social media for images of that conference. It was over 4 hours of just nonstop philosophy. I want to shout out everybody for just supporting philosophy in the city of Dallas and in the Dallas, county, as well as the greater DFW area. Very awesome. What are y'all talking about? I don't have headphones on.
I want to say shout out Manzi for making it all possible.
From what I heard, is that we're talking about the difference between
anybody want to
ethics and
second that,
morality.
third that, fourth that?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I leave it in your hands, folks.
No.
Just duct tape Dusty's mouth shut, and we should be good.
God, I don't have
Just
to listen
stay.
to Manzi's floundering
Oh
anymore.
my
I can almost
God.
hear the fat
Manzi.
jiggling down his esophagus.
He loves
No,
me.
Don't go.
I do.
This is how he shows affection. It's precious.
Abuse, yeah.
All right, take it easy, guys.
So
Okay, I'm out.
So speaking of each individual, and talking about individuals such as Hitler, wouldn't you say that morality is more like the idea of like good and bad? It's just straight up to an individual.
Yeah.
So here's you're kind of referring to, I guess you could say, vaguely cultural relativism, where once again, because the circumstantial is different for everybody. But at the same time, I feel like there's an argument to be made that the human condition is almost universal, and so therefore that kind of implies not necessarily a universal morality, but there's like a certain
So
a certain baseline for all humans.
Yeah, I feel like the
Perseverance?
like a
Baseline,
like
sir.
a German in Nazi Germany who was a Nazi sympathizer. They were a citizen under the Nazi state. They would not harbor Jews. They would support their extermination. However, if they saw a Jew in the street, they wouldn't stab the Jew. Because that would be direct murder, and that's not exactly something that plays easily on the human conscience, regardless of whether or not that person is a degenerate in your society.
Well, it kind of that still depends. Like it's like a matter of like here, yeah, sure, but it's actually we also talked about this philosophy club about like murders and such. And the idea of like if you're born in an environment where straight up everyone where everyone gets killed off or something, wouldn't you agree that at that point it'd be normalized in a way where like a person will naturally believe murder, like killing someone?
Well, yeah, that's just how desensitization works.
Yeah.
Everyone goes through it. In the military,
But
there was a movement
not
from
not in a form of
circular to...
desensitization, more like an upbringing, as in doing this is actually okay. The
That is what desensitization
desensitization
means,
would have been, oh, this is actually bad. I don't.
No, you're explaining what desensitization is.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest, that was done pretty much in the medieval times, where they will kill anyone in the street if you were found guilty of witchcraft. Even the Inquisition was responsible for capturing for heresy, so it was kind of like normalized to kill someone during those eras.
The whole basis there, once again, is just that you have a just reason to kill them. I think everyone will agree that no one should be killed on an injustice ground.
That also changes definition.
Well, here's let's get to this, because I feel like we have to define morality at this point.
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the issue, because I feel like we're working with different definitions
Okay,
of morality.
then in that case, can I propose a quandary? I'm afraid I really wish wish Hannah were on the mic for this, but oh well. I'm going to propose a moral quandary. Fugitive blood sports, like gladiatorial combat, but prison inmates who consensually are thrown into a coliseum of sorts where they must fight to the death. Is this... It is available for public viewing, public attendance, with paid tickets. There are also concession stands. There are people walking around with food. It's a very popular attraction. Is it moral or not?
There's a rationality there to say, oh, well, these prisoners lost their rights the moment they became prisoners by the state.
Yeah.
And
So
so
you're saying so you said before that these two are okay for it. They're all for it.
no,
Yeah, why
they're
not?
prisoners, bro.
I'm all for it.
So they're kind of forced into
It's
it,
moral.
or they could be voluntary. I mean, either way it goes.
It's
Well,
fair.
like I said, it's consensual.
It's
Oh,
fair
consensual
trade
then.
gladiators. Yeah, there we go.
Gladiators.
It's not
Yeah.
an unjust ground, so yeah, because they decided to do it.
So you believe that gladiatorial combat is moral?
I don't necessarily believe, in my opinion, but I can see the rationality behind it,
Okay.
basing it off the idea of just and unjust.
Okay. Is anyone who thinks it's not moral?
It depends which ethical system we're using.
If you saw on the TV, there's I don't know, John Doe versus Dale Smith on the weekly fugitive blood sports channel, and you saw them just stabbing at each other, spilling blood all across the sand, you would think, yeah, all right.
So here's the thing.
Wait, these are both immoral people?
I've just proposed a moral quandary as to
they
define
consensually
morality
decided.
by fugitive blood sports,
Yeah,
and whether
that's
they're
okay.
moral
No,
or
I'm
not.
just
So here's the thing. I mean, we've already kind of established that morality is something that the community decides on. You know, it's something that they kind of become. It becomes a social norm.
Right.
So if at that point this whole idea of gladiators is okay, yeah, it's okay if they kill each other, and the community is okay with it, then
Then it becomes moral.
Under
Yeah.
utilitarian system, I would argue. In
But-
cultural
okay.
relativism.
But once again, we're playing with the idea of the definition of morality. That's why I feel like it was so important to kind of give it some kind of ground.
So morality is pretty much entirely subjective based on the society.
Well, according
could
to
argue
Kantian ethics,
individualistic.
it wouldn't be subjective.
Okay,
It's
go ahead.
objective. He will argue that there are certain moral stuff that they're just not to be debated. They're just absolutely wrong, with no exceptions.
Like what?
Could
Like
you
what?
point
Oh,
one out?
one example would be lying. He argued lying would be something that you can never do, because once you basically, he stated the thing that in order to know something is right or wrong, it has to be universalized, a maximum that can be universalized. So I mean that if you allow everybody to lie, then there will be a point that no one can be trusted.
So what do you think about killing?
He will also argue that killing is wrong.
So is asteroid immoral?
What?
Is an asteroid that can kill 1 million people immoral?
We actually went over the moralities of quote unquote natural evils, as Mason Henry put it during the philosophy conference.
Okay.
He went over the idea of like the root of all evil.
Okay.
He made the point that and actually Jace was there, and he asked Mason a question that he couldn't answer. Mason was arguing that natural disasters are natural evils, and that hold on, come stay with me, buddy. Natural disasters like animal attacks, stuff like that, are natural evils because they cause damage that people reel from, and they think, wow, not cool, I wish that hadn't happened. So you could say that something that causes that kind of direct harm is evil. However, Jace argued that it's the results of those that are evil.
It's the action.
Yeah, like the destruction wrought by a hurricane is evil rather than the hurricane itself.
Yeah,
Well, that's odd
Khan will argue
because-
that if that were to happen, like a meteor were to fall on people, if you don't try to save those people, then it will be immoral, according to Khan.
So
You have to save those people.
now this is very odd because what we're doing here is we're essentially, it seems like we're applying a human construct onto nature. You know,
Moralizing
this
things
idea,
that can't be moralized.
this idea of morality doesn't exist in nature. Rather, we make it up.
Well,
And
I
so
mean, yeah, we make that's how society works. We just
yeah,
make things
I understand.
up.
I understand. So that's kind of weird to say that. Oh, well, because I forgot what philosopher it was, but people saying that
Stoicism,
it was the
probably.
it was the intent that essentially is where good or evil is.
It's the
like,
consciousness.
Yeah.
If something has a consciousness, they can, it's moral. So a rock, no, can't give anything, It's not moral because it doesn't have a conscious. Like Hitler has a consciousness, but his action was immoral, not himself.
and it was based on his intent essentially.
The
So
intent.
so that's why I'm kind of it's hard for me to come to terms to say that something in nature is immoral.
Okay, let me ask
What about
you.
animal? Like an animal attacking a human? Can that be immoral?
How about a human attacking a human accidentally, like a hit and run or something, or an accidental murder, like he accidentally, hit someone over the head. I don't know how you
Is
would
that
do
evil?
that.
I'm gonna say that's well, since there's no
I think
intent for the person to be hit, I would consider that not evil at all.
Boy, here.
You're welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
I love him so much.
He's actually getting us some milk at the gas station.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, my name's Devin Troy Johnson. Y'all know me. I'm usual guest on here.
He's our favorite.
Never seen
Apparently
you
he's our
before.
favorite.
No, never.
Don't lie to yourself.
My eyes coming in.
Nice to meet you.
So much beauty.
Bro, why are you making me rub your eyes?
So
It's immoral. If accidental murder is immoral, or
So-
an animal killing someone is immoral.
So the
Oh,
action can be good or evil,
right.
but it still is moral because it's consciousness. Anything I think conscious is moral.
Okay.
So,
But the action, it now depends the good or bad with the intent.
so what makes something evil? Is it the intent or is it the action?
Oh, I think I went through that question
Both.
with in that
Both?
scenario.
Shouldn't he? I
Both?
feel like the question should be asked if there's such thing as good or evil. Instead, we should just use the comedy of like benefit or detriment.
Yeah. I think I can answer that question about with in that scenario. Imagine that there's two drivers, like one of them, they both got drunk like the same night, but they were both from different cities.
Oh, I see.
And they both drive at night. So one of them easily reached home safely, but he still he still break the law of driving drunk and speeding up. But the other driver didn't have the luck, so he basically accidentally ran over a girl and killed her while being drunk and running over. But the problem is that that driver will face the consequences, while the other one wouldn't face the consequences. The question is, are they both immoral because they both broke the law?
They're both immoral. Yeah.
Or only the one that run over the girl?
It's
they're
not.
both.
It's not that it's moral. That's not moral. It's just not ethical in terms of like the laws and such.
Well,
Interesting.
Here's something. Here's something I have. So it's funny. I just got out of a class that we were discussing about ethics and morals in my mass communications class. But what is the standard for ethics and morality? Where is it okay to say, if you say that stealing is wrong, but then you have a starving, you have somebody who's starving and they have to steal food because there's nowhere else to get it, is that ethically and morally okay? And when you do have, laws that say, okay, you're not allowed to do this, what makes it ethical or moral? Because what's ethical and moral to us as a society in the U.S. may not be the same as overseas. The freedoms we have today may not be viewed as ethical or moral overseas, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So where is
Yeah.
the standard set? Who
That's,
sets that
maybe-
standard?
that's exactly what we're trying to get
Maybe
at.
it's the decision that is ethical or moral, not the action, but the decision
See,
of saying something is moral.
that's why I was asking the question. Is it the intent and the action? Because at that point, what you were getting at, Devin, you were saying that essentially you get two same outcomes, but different rationalities or different purposes. And so, like, if you were to go and steal, like, let's say, a loaf of bread for your family because they're starving, instead of someone who's stealing that loaf of bread because he's wanting to go sell it, but he doesn't actually need it, are they both the same amount of evil? Are they
No.
both evil?
No.
And so at that point, it's the same action. So is the action really evil, or is it the intent?
Yeah, and not even that. It's still like you said, even with the intent, you still say that to steal is wrong, labeling the action. We've already set that even without the intent, despite the intent, you've already set the standard of the action itself being evil, regardless of the intent. But then when you start getting into technical terms, like saying, okay, well, if the intent is because I didn't have anywhere else to get food, now what stops other people from saying, okay, well, I can steal your food as long as I don't believe that there's another place to get it. If I come to this college campus, or if I say, I like your phone, I'm just going to go ahead and steal it, and now it's mine, because there's nowhere else I can get this specific phone that I specifically want, doesn't make it okay.
So
The
then I
only
guess maybe,
problem with the okay, go
Oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
sorry. I guess maybe that's the difference between the morality and it being ethical. So perhaps the action is unethical, but then perhaps the rationality of it's moral.
In my
I guess you
opinion,
could
I would say
argue.
it's more like a moral ladder. If we say the property is more valuable than then human life, then I'll argue that, yeah, stealing would be wrong because you're stealing someone else's property, like a bread and a phone. But if we tend to have human life above, like, property, then we will say that, no, it's not immoral. If you're trying to save humans' lives by stealing, so I feel like it depends on the latter of morals.
I think it's the decision that's labeling the evil good.
I was gonna say, if I remember correctly, someone brought up Maslow's ladder. I mean pyramid or something like that, and where pyramid, and where like the most, and that was brought up because I was talking about this prioritization of morals in which this moral is more important than the other moral, and that was brought up also by the idea of self-defense, the idea of which one moral is more important than another moral, so it's better to stick to the more important moral and then break the other one in order to maintain this more essential and more fundamental.
That makes sense, because it's like, if you do you have Jews in your house? No, because it saves someone's life rather than. That makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, pretty much the Jew point is the one that breaks Kant's morality, or having multiple morals at the same time.
Well, then who decides what morals are better than others? What might be more moral to you may not be the most moral to somebody else. If, for example, if we can agree that killing is wrong, I'm sorry, what?
Sure about that?
Okay, if we can say that killing is wrong, if somebody says killing is wrong, but then another person says, but it's out of self-defense and that's okay, but the same person that says, okay, it's okay to defend yourself but not kill, even though you're defending yourself, which one becomes more moral? Which one takes the higher ground?
That's what our justice system is for, though. That's what they decide those scenarios. That because it's impossible to decide for every scenario. We can't say, oh, every time someone kills someone in self-defense, it's moral. That's why we have our justice system. That's why we have a jury, because that way, when people do something like that, we can say, okay, what was the circumstance? Was there any part of this that was premeditated?
But then you say that the justice system, you're still putting it into a mortal's hands. You're still putting it into another human being's hands. You're letting them decide what is moral over there because, for example, in Texas, it is okay for you to have a certain gun. It's okay to have certain gun laws versus in California, you are not allowed to have a gun without a fin on the hand grip. You can't have a pistol grip. You can't have a certain number of bullets in your magazine. In Florida, you have stand your ground. In New Jersey, you have to let this person break into your house. You cannot defend your house. Your home is not your castle. And you have to let them do whatever they have to do. If they're going to hurt you, then that's just what they're going to do. And then you have to call the police afterwards. You have to literally hide in a corner in your house in New Jersey. What makes that one okay versus the ones in Texas and Florida, respectively?
Well, I think it's critical to say that law does not necessarily equal morality. So we have to. I feel like we have to make that distinction. So I don't like that interjection of it.
Law and justice are like how a specific society decides what is just and unjust. They're not. It's not all universal. It's completely.
I mean, it's like there's like some delay in timing because like I was trying to say this whole time. Like the morals is going to be different from person to person. Mm-hmm. Now here's where the ethics come in. The ethics come in and saying this is a accumulation of everyone, like anyone's in this group or communities, like morals. So like it's basically like some kind of like algorithm in a way. Or like, hey, this is considered to be the best morals overall. It's not perfect, but it's probably going to be good for and that's like the basis of like law and system in a way. Where like ethics is like where it's like the betterment of either most or all people. And so that's why. Okay. So that's kind of like what you said, like the jury being like doing this. It's because the jury knows what's best for most of the people.
Let's say this: what if the jury is uninformed, or rather they're misled in some kind of way?
Yeah, not every jury is just
like a shark lawyer going. That's
O.J. Simpson.
That doesn't make it ethical. It doesn't make it moral.
It does well. Yes, but like it's it's in a way where like it's better than leaving it up to case by case. It's more like a management issue if anything. At that point, it's like now it's just logistics. It's just like the jury. Sure, they're gonna screw up a good amount, but in the end, it's gonna end up.
Well, it still doesn't. Doesn't decide if it's ethical or moral.
I could argue with a system that. With a case that happened today or even yesterday, Rodney Reed was supposed to be executed yesterday, and based on new evidence, he's not executed anymore. And here's the thing. Forensics 101, they didn't test the murder weapon for DNA, and there was hair that didn't match the accused on the victim's body. It didn't match the accused. He said he was having a consensual relationship with the victim, but yet he was convicted of murder and rape when all they had to go on was just sperm that was just found. Jeez. And here's another kicker. The victim's then fiance had actually gone to prison for because he had taken a lesser charge and pleaded guilty to improper sexual conduct and kidnapping when the charges were originally rape and kidnapping. And he had pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and then served time when Rodney Reed has still claimed his innocence. And then there are people who had said that, yes, the would-be fiance who had served prison, he had confessed to killing his fiance, saying she got what she deserved at her funeral, and knew about the affair and had confessed to it allegedly. And so when you have a jury who says, okay, well, since we're not going to, since we don't have enough evidence, but because this person has been, I will say this because I don't want to leave anything out. Rodney Reed was accused of six other women, but was never charged. And when he was charged with one of them, he was acquitted. But because they try to take in the previous records, which you're not supposed to do. They took the previous records. They're like, okay, he must have just done this one. Jeez. So where does the jury become just? When does the jury, the defense system isn't perfect. And yes, the jury system isn't perfect. And we have to realize that we are all humans and we're going to make mistakes. And these mistakes can cost people's lives. And even though you have a system, it doesn't mean that it always works to your favor.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. Here's the thing, though, because then you have these lawyers, right, who spin the story however they want you to see it, right? So then you get that different bias that's projected to the jury, and then that's why we have jury of our peers, right? Because they're picked randomly from the population so that you can get as just as possible of a verdict from that, right? Yeah, you're not supposed to know about all his other, alleged discrepancies or whatever, but at the same time, all they need is reasonable doubt, right? So if a lawyer spins something in a certain way, I'm not saying it's perfect. I am saying though that it does to a certain extent. So, it's almost immoral
so
in
it
a
definitely,
way. Interesting.
It has a purpose, but it doesn't always execute it the way
Perfectly.
It's supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's the point. But I'm still having an issue here because we still have not put a basis for morality.
But I think
because morality is individual.
I think ethics and morality is also inputted by somebody's religious beliefs, and we're also just pinpointing the United States. Yeah. We have other countries who believe religiously it's different, and that we can take a woman who's showing skin on their heel, on their ankle, and kill her and stone her to death because individual
being immoral to
the religion. So I think a lot is the religious belief.
I'll say religion plays a factor, but I say the still religion is made up of different moral beliefs because that's the origin of religion. It derives from moral beliefs of our environment. So to answer your question, who decides what is morality? I would say that who decides what is morality? I would say that is reason itself. If you take Kant's ethics, which is morality through reason, but if you take subjectivity, you say that you decide morality.
So I think it's fair to say, I think my basis, the way I was looking at it, maybe justice and injustice. Because even if you could say a convoluted or rather an immoral morality and say, oh, well, I think this is evil. What are you going to base that evil off of? Your own distorted idea of injustice and justice.
Exactly.
Well, then in that case, the law system is the closest attempt that we can get at trying to find a universal, a universal applicable morality, and it's very easily exploitable. So therefore, wouldn't just frontier justice, if someone's committing a crime on you, you just gat them, be just about like the most just thing you can do. If you have direct evidence that someone is wronging you or harming someone else, you just, I don't know, gat them and then gat yourselves. That's pretty much like the reset to neutral morality.
This podcast has been promoted by the NRA.
Okay,
I'll argue that.
So I have
yes.
So I'll bring you something from my mass communications class I just got out of. When you have a story on, there was a story on what kind of glass is your car using. Is it using tempered glass? Is it using laminated glass? And there was a 911 call that happened where a lady who was calling 911, she had her baby, her like maybe she had her baby in the back seat. She was in a lake and her car was going down, and in the 911 call, you can hear her saying, break the glass, and all the way until her last breath until she died. And the journalist was debating on, do you use that 911 call? And is it ethical or moral to use it? Now, 911 calls are public record. And she had to ask, she decided to ask the family, you know, how do you feel about it? They ended up using the call anyway, but the family was like, no, you can't use it. And it's not really up to the family at that point, because anybody can go in there and look for that 911 call. And the question becomes, when you use that footage or you use that 911 call, when do you stop? When do you stop the 911 call recording? When do you start it? And should you have used it at all?
Right.
This goes to like this kind of
Hold on, get in the mic because I want to make sure I hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So this gives me this idea of like a social contract, or like a
Yes.
Yeah, in which like, well, even though she wasn't aware and everything, the fact that she was in a place where this was a thing, regardless of what, if it was wrong or like, you know, moral or not, it was still gonna be. It's like there shouldn't be placed a limit on where it begins or ends, regardless.
Yeah.
It's more. I think this goes more to like ethics, in which, I don't got anything right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you because I would say that I have to agree with you. You're right, because it based on the
Adrian,
contract and also how
could you open the door
enforce
for
law.
B and her friend?
Also, it also depends on you enforce the law. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's okay, I get it.
Because if you enforce the law, like let's say
You're
voting,
me
like
behind me.
if you give people the option, like they can they vote or not vote, people will decide what is they're gonna do. And I feel like 911 is the same thing. Like people are either gonna use it or not use it, but it's not
Ignore the
immoral.
people in the back.
It's not immoral if you ignore it.
I went all the way to my other destination to re-listen to my phone.
Oh,
That's
no.
hilarious. That's funny. You might as well stay.
Nice one, Rat Man.
Just stay.
Somebody attack that man.
Manzi.
Get over here, Manzi. Do it yourself.
Manzi!
I'm innocent.
Damn.
Oh, it's
So I'm just saying.
Put those rat claws to good use.
I'm innocent.
You gotta stay for the think about it at least.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Think about it. Hey, Manti, just say it for the road.
One for the road.
Yeah, put it right in the cheese, Mike.
Do you have $50?
Ignore Dusty.
Wow.
Never.
Okay.
Think about it.
I'll do a fundraiser.
Good job. Good job.
All right, thank God he's out of here.
Hi.
Dolly man, he tears.
All right, so
Andy-
quick question.
Andy
Is this
Manzi.
ethical or moral for the audience who's listening?
Oh, it's
Or is it neither?
What do you mean, quote unquote, this?
I'm talking about our
I mean,
one viewer.
we just let people in. The conversation kind of stopped. We got people talking over here. I mean, is it ethical or moral? Let's be the judge right now.
Hold up. Let me wait for my mom to text me back, and I'm sure she'll answer that question.
I'd say it's quite a very ethical and moral thing. We're providing the audience with a nice homey kind of feeling. Like
I'm not sure how homey this feels, buddy.
And that's what your
I don't
opinion
think
says.
I
But
don't
what does
think
the
that would
audience
work in
think?
the law if you're doing like
audience.
a law.
Okay, fine, guys. Okay, audience. What do you say? Yeah, we love it too. Yeah, see, I don't say anything wrong.
What was that?
Look at that corruption already.
Oh, jeez.
But then the question is: it more? Is it
Because I love
ethical
my
if you guys ignored me?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Where were we, anyways?
Oh, I was just saying.
So
the,
going back to when we had the discussion of, you know, what was the limits or the, you know, the standards of the ethical and moral dilemma, you know, especially with the 911 call.
Oh, I just answered. I said that it depends if you enforce the law. Like, is it obligatory that you always call 911 or is it not? Because I feel like if you don't enforce it, then people are gonna choose to ignore it and also use it whenever they want to, and they're not gonna get punished
So
unless
like
you enforce
Miranda
it.
rights or
So now,
something.
so now I'm curious.
Like-
Can there ever be a hierarchy to moralities? I guess like a way to kind of I guess.
Besides
Maslow?
me,
I think-
don't know.
I think
I
it's
don't- I don't
also
think- I don't
the
think Maslow's-
standards putting a lot to enforce a moral or ethical decision.
Because
Theocracies have that moral hierarchy where,
Or take
especially
for
if you have,
example,
a
like
caste
voting.
system.
Voting in Britain is enforced. Like you don't get the option to ignore voting. Like that would be one example.
Really?
I was
Yeah,
going to refer
because
to
you have to go to vote in Britain compared to United States that you can choose to go to vote if you feel like it, or can you just go home and not vote at all?
Okay.
So I was going to refer to one of Manzi's, like one of the authors that he showed us in his book, the Intro to Ethics class.
Yeah.
He's talking about Dworkin, where he has like a certain baseline for certain moralities and how they can be misled. Maybe like ideas like a preposition of fact, or having certain biases towards a certain group of people. Essentially, like all these ideas of having a rationality that isn't based on fact or isn't based on truth. And so maybe that's a way we can gauge to say, well, maybe this morality isn't moral.
Define truth.
Oh my gosh! This
You know, we actually
okay,
did
okay,
that
okay,
a hot
okay,
few podcasts ago.
okay. Just a simple yes or no. Is it like science truth or like philosophy-ish truth?
I guess
Science isn't truth.
Science is just a method
It
to
is a
look
whole
for-
other
It's a
topic.
hypotenuse.
Just because we live in the
That
matrix
was
does not
good.
mean
That
you have
was
to say
really
that.
It depends on your belief in science, I would say.
Yeah.
Because I'm a scientist who doesn't believe science is the truth. It's just a method to
Yeah.
understand
It's
how the
based,
universe works, but
Well,
doesn't mean
what I
literally
mean,
is the way.
what I
it is.
mean by truth, and maybe like not
based
an,
on decision.
an exclusion of biases to say maybe
Ah.
all gay people are evil.
I see.
Like that's an opinion. That's not
sorry,
a
what?
truth.
That's an opinion.
Oh, so you basically are.
It's okay. I can say that because I'm bi.
This has been promoted. Well,
Yeah.
No way.
So that's
Wait, that's
basically
like-
similar to the
Gay people
human
are
problem
evil.
of the is and out, which is just
Sponsored by
because something
Westboro
is
Baptist.
doesn't mean it's not the same thing as saying something ought to be. Like for example, if you say like killing is wrong is not it's a is argument, which is not the same as you ought not to kill, which is an out argument, and an is argument are different from each other because is are truth or fact. Stuff that the way it is, like this is a book. While an art argument is something that is dealing not with fact but with moral. And a lot of us conflate that is and out, which Hume stated that it should be broken, which is we cannot say like something is wrong just because it's wrong. It's just
So
But that's
the whole idea is that we're not gauging whether it's true, like whether those kinds of opinions are truth or not. I think that's dependent on the individual. I think it's
yeah, that's what he's arguing for.
the rationality that you base it off of is to say like, okay, well, I believe that all gay people are evil. What are you basing that off of? Oh, just my opinion.
Right.
Well, that's usually more like a my social or religious what's the word I'm
Authority,
looking
I
for?
guess.
Isn't that
Yeah.
how like
Yeah,
that's
anything-
well, that's actually included in Dworkin's idea, appeal to authority.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, yeah.
that would be seen by Dworkin as an irrational morality.
I think the real moral or ethical, not dilemma, but I think Orlando, I think you touched on this. When we do make the moral or ethical, decisions, these decisions have to benefit society, and not just in a way it has to benefit ourselves to some degree. When we talk about the hierarchy of needs and like the feeling of belonging and everything, yes, we do need those things, but we also have to make sure that we are benefiting society as far as are we meeting their needs as well.
why why
And this is how you run a community. You have to get the needs out there, not the wants necessarily, but the needs. When
It's
you're
why
making
we
these
have law. I
ethical
like
and
that.
moral decisions. So when people say, I need my phone, we've lived hundreds of years without having it. Okay. What you need is sustenance and food in order to survive.
Okay, here's a
And
moral dilemma for you then.
All right.
What if your livelihood is on your phone?
Your livelihood is on your phone.
How?
Yeah.
Okay,
so if
then-
you work on your phone.
Oh.
Okay, so here's where you can
oppression.
find an alternate route for that. If you say your livelihood is on your phone and you work through your phone, what do you do in case that phone runs out of battery, decides to crash on you? So then you have to find a way to adapt.
Right.
But that's
So-
your moral decision to
I
have
got
a phone
two
and to rely on it.
phones.
Right.
You can always decide to be in a society or or possibly an environment in which these rules don't apply, like
anarcho-primitivism.
Yeah, anarchy. Oh
no, I mean like
and prim gang,
like book a flight to Estonia and just do that. I don't know.
And then
let's just kill everybody.
You live in a different society with different rules.
Okay, so
if we're gonna kill everybody, let's do a purge.
When you say you go to that society with different rules, what are those rules? Where do those rules live to? What are the ethical and moral rules that society lives up to? Where are the hierarchy of needs ever different?
So,
in what part of the world?
Well, those like social rules are what forms their justice system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like let's look at maybe indigenous people who say, okay, well, it's okay if I sacrifice someone, or it's okay if I'm a cannibal and I eat certain people.
Yes.
I'm sure they have some kind of structure to it. It's not something that's just going to be formed out of nothing.
Like the Aztecan flower wars, where since they didn't have like a lot of interstate conflict, they would host between two states or city-states, whatever you want to call them, what are called flower wars, because the religion there is is highly based on human sacrifice, and these flower wars were consensual wars that were planned and happened on an agreed-upon basis, wherein the purpose was entirely to collect prisoners of war so that they could be sacrificed for religious purposes. And to them, that's totally chill, dude. Drop a homie up on Chichen Itza and just gat him open. Like that's cool.
So you're suggesting that it was an inside job?
No,
not really.
Okay, we have guys.
I got it. I was like, wow.
We actually have to wrap this up. We have less than 3 minutes remaining.
So
we usually extend it.
We usually go over by like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
We're gonna have final thoughts about 5 minutes beforehand now.
Final thoughts, 30
We have a new
minutes.
host.
Yeah.
She said, "Hey, get your final thoughts. You
Get
got
your
30
final
seconds.
thoughts out here. Go. Let's move it.
All right.
All right. So where do we start?
Who wants to go first?
I think I'll go first.
All the way at the end."
All right. So my final thought is probably there's no more right or wrong. It's all nihilism. That'll be my final thought. Maybe all right or wrong doesn't
Fair
exist. And it's we're
That's
all
what
nihilism.
philosophy conversations always
Law
work that way.
allows
What
more-
is anything anymore? What did you say?
I'm gonna go kill everybody.
Law.
And it's moral.
That's all I say. Law.
Mic drop. It's a
Ethics.
text, so you can't drop it.
Morality. Consciousness. Life.
My final thoughts are that morals, just like most things to me, are entirely subjective based upon the individual and the society that has raised them. I think that the idea of any kind of objective moral or objective ethic is a futile exercise, because there will always be the exception.
True. I believe also that morality is subjective, but I do believe in a baseline, because although we are subjective, there seems to be consistent laws within all sort of society, some kind of structure. The very objectivity of this morality is that there is some kind of structure. And so if there is some kind of structure, then that means there has to be some kind of baseline. So although, yes, it's different for everyone in some ways or another, we all reach the same conclusions.
I would say that morality is oftentimes based on religion and selfish intention. And
Yes.
Sorry, do those two
Totally
not
agree.
coincide?
they
Totally
do
agree.
to some extent. But ethics are more laws to live by, and more or less the greatest happiness principle, which I keep saying, because it shut up. Because it's like the greatest. Whatever we do, it's for the best for the most amount of people. And most people are inherently selfish. So
Yes, I agree.
that's my final thought there.
My final thoughts are: we'll never get. There's no such. I don't think there's such thing as a definition for morality. And I think the only other thing is there's never going to be an end to this debate of what's moral, what's ethical. Since there's too much opinions and beliefs that are going to interject into that, it's going to mess up this whole topic debate. Yeah.
That's why we need an
I agree.
authoritarian figure to decide it for us all.
Okay, I'll do it. Why not?
Hobbes.
Okay.
Anyways.
So my final thoughts. So when it comes to morals, I do believe that morals are supposed to be made for the good. That when you decide to make a decision, a moral, when you say, "Hey, I made a moral decision," this is a personal belief, but I do believe that morals should be good and that they're not for selfish reasons. There should be for self-preservation reasons, but it will also help the greater good. When you are a good Samaritan, you are making a moral decision to be that good Samaritan. And I do believe that we need to have more of that and not look down upon each other in a dismoral intent. When you have ethics, it's more of, as Hannah had pointed out, laws that we have lived by. But as we develop ethics, there are always new ethics that are being developed as we move forward into the future. There are always new laws being made, but your morals and ethics may conflict with one another. Your morals may be tighter than ethics, and you may loosen your morals to match the ethics, but your morals are things that you have been grown up to believe, things that you have developed as you were growing and as you are developing into an individual. Just because there have been previous beliefs that have tried to downgrade or degrade other individuals based on race, skin color, or sexual identity or whatever, doesn't mean that you have to disrespect somebody. And you may not agree with the way that person or persons have decided to live their life, and that's fine. As long as you still respect them, I feel like that is still being moral. Because you respect them as a person. You may not have, and you don't have to agree with anything that they do. We don't have to agree with anything that anybody does as individuals. But as long as we can approach them as human beings and have a conversation, then okay. And if you can't have a conversation, that's fine too. You can just say, okay, well, you go your way, I go mine.
I'm right, and you're wrong.
And you know, people who say that just haven't grown up yet.
But of course, Hannah.
But that'll be the
grow up.
But even if you can't have that conversation, you know that hey, that's a human being. They're gonna go their way. I'm gonna go mine. And I don't have any malicious intent towards that person, and that person should never have any malicious intent towards you.
Awesome.
Well said.
Awesome. So
Let's
let's
all
all say
favorite.
Exactly. Let's all say the line. Okay. Yeah. Let's all do it.
What's the line?
Oh, sorry. Does Hannah not have any last thoughts?
Okay, then you don't do it.
I do have one more last
I thought she'd
thought.
already done it.
No,
I
it's
thought she'd
too
already
late.
done everything.
Okay,
I thought she'd already
want to do
done
it on
it.
3? Orlando, you want to count us
All
off?
right.
Or Dusty? No, Dusty, you do
Wait,
it.
Right.
guys, this is going to be my last radio show because I am leaving Richland. So it was a
Yay.
pleasure. Shut up,
I'm
Orlando.
sorry.
Wow, man, it's a good thing Manzi isn't here. It's a good thing Manzi isn't here. Manzi would have been like, oh, good riddance.
See, I
Yeah,
just
you're
said
probably
yay.
right.
I didn't say good.
Yeah, oh, good for you. And so I have really enjoyed learning with everyone and being the communications officer, and I will miss everyone.
Thank you for all your service.
And thank you for your service, Mr. President.
No, I don't.
God
like
bless
that.
America.
God bless America.
Am I
God
gonna have
bless
to work
America.
for you one day?
America.
America.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. If just give me a promotion while I'm in the military. Just give me a promotion and I'll be good.
Yep, absolutely. Well, guys, you have been listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on the show are Manzi's own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the Teachable CD. All right, y'all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Think about it.
Think about it.
Come on, guys.
Dusty, what the
Thinking's fun.
heck?
Do it.
That's messed up, bro.